This is Greg Hanthorne with the Greg Hanthorne Show, where I talk to authors and creatives about their creative process to help you be more creative. My special guest today is Dr. Heidi Thorne. She is not just an author, but she is a self-publishing advocate. And her goal is to help all of us avoid the expensive mistakes that can come about when we self-publish. Tell me, Heidi, it's good to see you again.
No, it's good to see you.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into this process of becoming first an author.
First an author. Well, actually, I never intended to be an author. I really, honestly, I read a lot of books as a kid, but I just really didn't get into writing until I was probably about 30 or so. And I was working in sales for a trade show company. And basically what we did was we sold all the exhibit space for these really large national shows. We managed the show, marketed it and everything. And before I came on board, they were using some really god-awful sales letters that would start out with, "Dear Sir, enclosed please find." And if you know anything about the trade show industry, it's very peak and valley. So during the valleys, I took on the project of revamping all of the sales letters. So I got really creative with it. I would do parodies and stories and poetry and all kinds of things just to get people's attention. And so I got a reputation as the golden pen. And so I took that and leveraged it into a position in marketing where I was writing all the ad copy. So basically I became a copywriter. And I was writing brochures and press releases and doing all that. So I really came from more of the business copywriting side of things.
And then how did you jump from there to writing books?
Writing books? Well, actually, I didn't start writing books until many years later, because after I had done the sales stint in trade shows, and then I taught for a while, and then I took a job as an editor of a trade newspaper for about 15 years. And somewhere along in that path, probably about 10 years in then, and I also had another business in promotions and marketing, and I was going to use a book as a way to promote myself and my business. Mm-hmm. So that was my very first book, was on how to purchase promotional products. Now, I know that sounds really insanely stupid because you think, wow, if I just want to put my logo on a t-shirt, that should be just pretty straightforward and easy. And it's really not, because just like self-publishing, you can make a lot of really expensive mistakes. So I thought, well, I'll write a book with all the pitfalls of, that happen when you buy that sort of stuff. And that is still my best-selling book now. Let's see, it's been 9 years later.
That is amazing. So your first book was born of seeing a need of personal experience. And then you realize, oh, you know what? I've got more wisdom here to share. Did it start out as just an article, or did it start out as, did you say, hey, how did it begin?
Right. Well, actually, I had done some blogging before that,
what year was this?
That topic.
What year was this?
This was probably about 2009, 2010 or so. And that was when social media was still evolving as well. And so I was really big on Twitter. I mean, not really big, like thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. But I mean, I was leveraging Twitter to get business for my business. And so it worked really well. And so I had the Twitter thing going on. I was blogging, I was doing, and so I really repurposed a lot of my material into a book.
So and now that's interesting. A lot of people will say that you shouldn't turn a blog into a book, but yet you did it for your best-selling book. What is the criteria to look at?
In terms of converting your blog into a book, it's really dependent on the topic, I think. Some people use a blog as sort of a personal megaphone about their thoughts of what's going on today, their opinions. However, I think if you do write evergreen type of material, that's helpful as a resource, I think that can be collected into a book later on.
What do you see?
So
So
that's,
that's interesting. What do you see as the? I like that. The criteria really is: is it evergreen material that is timeless, that doesn't go out of
correct.
date? And what about what are the topics that? How do I know my topic doesn't work? My blog doesn't work as a book.
As a book, well, I think if it deals with newsworthy topics, I know that sounds strange, but if it's newsworthy today, it probably won't be newsworthy tomorrow. You know, and with especially as we're recording this, we're still in the midst of this pandemic issue. People are blogging about all kinds of things about it. This is not going to be evergreen material because it's evolving too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put it into a book, there's nothing to stop you from doing it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to stop you from using it as the basis of a book, but it might not be relevant within 6 months. And so then you've gone through all the investment of creating a book and formatting and editing and all of that. And then, what's it going to be in a few years? I mean, you look at like this book that I was just talking about, and I used some of that blog material, of course, editing it and creating a book out of the material, of course, and that was evergreen material, because it's now still selling 9 years later.
That's amazing. So your first book, which is entitled Swag, I believe. That's my memory.
Yes, indeed.
And I saw it looked interesting, and it's available on Amazon. And it was came out of your personal deep knowledge that you had by seeing a need and addressing a need, similar to what a business person would do with starting a business.
Exactly.
How does that related to the other books? Now you've written over 20 books, and what's been the process of those other books? Has it been a similar process? Did you start with blogging, or did you turn straight into books?
Well, it's a combination, and usually, but the theory was the same for all of them. Once I saw a need for a book, then I pulled all the material together. I didn't just say I need to write a book and then try and find a topic. It was born out of questions I was getting from people online, or I was seeing on social media, issues that I was seeing pop up on social media related to the topics that I have expertise in. And so I would start publishing that. Usually I did, the ebook, print book, and now you can do them both together on Kindle Direct Publishing at one time, which is amazing. And then eventually got into the audiobooks too. And that's a whole different adventure.
Yeah. So what about the idea of publishing, of using the blog format as a way to promote the book itself? In other words, blogging first and then turning it into a book, which is similar to what you did, or it is what you did in the beginning. But is there a way to build a groundswell with that? And if you do, how do you not prevent there being, I've already got a book out there, you could just go backwards in time and read my blog?
Right. There could be, because a lot of the material that you have that we talk about, like you talk about, I talk about, we talk about the same things all the time.
Yeah.
So yes, it is out there. And a lot of people, you don't want to give away your whole book. You're going to be selective as to how much material you're going to repurpose, re-edit, all of those things from your blog. But the blog, in terms of getting commentary, and so that you can say, this is the topic that goes in the book. So really, you're not just like plopping it in.
Yeah. So in other words, you kind of use the amount of comments and views and the way people share it as a barometer to the kind of material to focus and key on. You're really what you're doing. You're crowdsourcing the marketing of it. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to say that. because I was looking at which of these blog posts, which of those topics has the validity to be in the book.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in a book format, it's very different from a blog. It's not going to be the same type of choppy. So, blogs can get kind of choppy, so you don't want to have the same thing. So you're really just using your blog as the basis. You're not just copy and paste all the time.
Yeah.
But crowdsourcing it, I think, would be a good way to put that, because in fact, I still use that method today to find new topics for more blog posts and more videos and all of that, because that's what's really happening. And then you get the ideas of which topics need more explanation, because some of these people, they'll ask you questions and they're so off the wall. And you're like, well, okay, I probably didn't explain that well enough.
Interesting. So where you need to drill down is a good indicator of the material where you need to focus more.
Right.
One of the things on your podcast that I found interesting is you do these reader surveys, or you do book surveys. Talk a little bit about, and for anyone who's not familiar, that you do a number of different types of finding out what authors, and talk a little bit about the publishing surveys you've done and some of the surprising results that you've seen.
Oh,
first off, those surveys, tell me who are you talking to, or who you're interviewing in those surveys, and then tell me some of the results.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I was seeing within my network people who were struggling with making money from publishing. And we all do as self-published authors. We have a lot of competition out there. And so I really wanted to know, was it just me? Or was it just my local network? Were we just having issues with it? Or was this more widespread? So I did a really pretty small survey in 2016, and I found things like 73% of the self-published authors that participated, and they were all anonymous, because I did through like SurveyMonkey, and so it was all anonymous. I didn't know who any of these people were. And 73% make less than $1,000 a year.
Wow.
From self-publishing.
Wow.
which is frightening. And so I thought, okay, I thought maybe it's just the people I had recruited, because I used SurveyMonkey, but I also had to do a lot of advertising to recruit people, because people don't just automatically want to share their book income data, nor do people want to participate in surveys, because it takes their time and all of that too. And then, so I did it again in 2018. I thought, wow, I got to see if these results are similar. And unfortunately, in 2018, within 1%, that 73% making less than $1,000 was the same, with a wider number of participants.
So do you have any idea whether or not these were fiction or nonfiction authors?
Yeah, actually, it was a mix of both.
Okay.
We had, in the 2016 version, we had a lot more nonfiction, because a lot of them that I recruited for Facebook, for some reason, I got more business people, because I did ask them if they were business owners too. And in 2018, I had more fiction authors. In fact, there were more fiction than nonfiction. So I think it doesn't really seem to be that much of an issue whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I mean, they're both doing about the same, which is scary.
So I'm wondering, is there I know with nonfiction, I've worked with several guys who have used their nonfiction books, let's say, to explain their business process. And as the first guy that I worked with told me, he was in sales training and sales marketing training, going to businesses, and they teach teams how to do certain things. He said, if I get one deal out of this, I've more than covered the cost of your expense, the publishing of the book. He said, that's it. So he's like, I'm not looking to sell many of these things. I'm really using it as a big brochure.
Yes, it's called the business card book.
Yes. What do you think of that?
And where I see people get stuck with that. And of course, because, like you, I come from a business background. And so, we do a lot of networking and things like that. And it's just, it doesn't really work that way, because people don't. Okay, so they have to read the book to understand you. But where I see authors get stuck is once they get a few business book sales, then they think, wow, I could really make money on this. This could be a whole other profit center. And then they shift focus away from their sales efforts, which they should be focusing on.
Yep.
And then I also see people who they hate marketing, they hate sales, and they figure if I write a book, which they could do because that's more of an introverted, private activity.
Yeah.
And if I just do this book, the leads will just come in like rain.
Yeah.
and they don't.
It's interesting. I've noticed this. I've noticed something very similar. That it is that it's easy for especially the first time author to think, in fact, I actually had a guy tell me, I think I'm going to be on Oprah. I'm like, no, this is a business sales. This is a sales strategy book. Oprah really doesn't. I don't think Oprah does that. I actually told him, I said, I don't think Oprah actually interviews you this kind. Oh, no. I think Oprah's going to, in fact, I could even see movie rights on this. I'm like, this is really not going to happen. But on the flip side, so I did my very best to dissuade him of the idea, but it turned out it did actually work out well for him. He got a few gigs because people said, "Oh, you have a book, you have more credibility, you have more." And did those people read the book? I don't know. Maybe the book could have been blank inside, but it could have just been
nice cover.
It could have been just the cover, but it was it. I do think it mattered, and when people pick up and read it and sample it, if it's not good writing, they'll think less. But just having it as you said, the brochure. But you're right; it is hard not to let the enthusiasm with the process turn into vanity with the concept. And when that happens, watch out, because you're a train bound for nowhere.
Right, exactly. And I see it all the time. I mean, it's, and I love questions from authors or wannabe authors. I think those are the more fun ones.
Yeah. What is the most frequent question, Heidi, when people talk to you? What is the most common question that you get?
Well, there's quite a few of them, but I think one of them that I get often through my blog is, how do I get a book deal? Even though they're interested in self-publishing because they can do it faster, they're in control. How do I get a book deal?
How do you answer?
Well, I don't. I said, first of all, that's a completely different path.
Yeah.
If you are interested in traditional publishing, I tell them, first of all, you have to get the writer's market, at least read through what is out in the market, what people are looking for, and then get their guide to literary agents so that, you can have somebody representing you. But they think it's just, they're going to walk in and they think their book is terribly unique. And a lot of books are very similar. All you have to do is type in your topic or genre on Amazon, and maybe 60, 90, 100,000 titles will show up.
Yeah.
And they think they're going to be the one.
What do you do to dissuade them of this concept?
Well, I tell them that they should try if they're really interested. I give them all the reasons that they shouldn't do this. And tell them that they need to, get an attorney involved, for rights and disclaimers and all these other things. And then I give them, there's about 50,000 books on Amazon already about this. Oh, but mine's unique. Okay, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's a lot of other things on the market. And I just tell them, go to Amazon. And I want you to see all the other books, but mine's different. They think they're so unique.
When you go to approach a topic, you've written 20 books. What
Mhm.
made you feel like you could write something that would stand out above the crowd?
Honestly, I only wanted it to stand out in my crowd. And I know that sounds odd, but I really was writing for just people who read my blog, people in my network. I saw their questions. I was addressing it to them. And you really have to have that person in mind when you write a book. You have to have that ideal reader or ideal customer in mind.
How do you come up with who your ideal reader is? In other words,
Well,
and
it's
how much do you flesh that person out?
how much do I flesh that person out? Well, because I do have a lot of networking experience. I can picture all these people, the person that I'm um, actually hoping to reach with my book. But online, or people who are not in, like business or networking, those sorts of things, I would say that they should be looking on social media. And when they see someone who looks like the person, I mean, not just in terms of looks, but in terms of the things they talk about, their concerns, their issues, just kind of follow that person and say, okay, well, here's what they're talking about today. Oh, that's a concern for them. Maybe I can address that. Or maybe that's some kind of entertainment they like.
So could you
So,
actually, as you're writing, and then someone gives you a question, you can
mhm,
actually write a chapter as if you were speaking to that particular person,
absolutely.
addressing that person's
Absolutely.
problem and issue, and as long as and that way you have a specific person in mind.
Exactly, exactly.
Your biggest triumph, what is the thing that brings Heidi most joy when it comes to the publishing process?
Well, actually, I think I've even mentioned I'm not like one of those trophy writers. Like I don't need like an award. I don't need thousands and thousands of book sales or anything like that. To me, it's just part of it's just part of my communication process. So to me, there isn't that big, oh, this is my book, and there's a halo around it and things like that. No, I don't have any of that going on.
Even for the
Um,
first 30 minutes after you get that copy in your hands, that first printed
no,
copy.
well, you know why? Because I'm looking at, oh, did something get screwed up here?
There's nothing worse than flipping through that first edition, and then on page 73, you see that typo that you swear you
You're like,
corrected.
how did I do that?
Yes,
How did I miss
yes,
that? Because
yeah.
I also edit, I've done editing, and I'm like, how did I miss it? And then it goes from, oh, well, that's great, to, oh man, I gotta correct that and re-upload. But no, and I think some of the things that really make me feel good as an author or a self-publishing advocate are some of the survey work I've done, and a lot of the blog posts and questions and answers. That to me is really satisfying for me, and especially because you and I met on TikTok. Some of the questions that you get there are way different than I'll get like on my blog, which are much more in depth on the blog. But sometimes on TikTok, there'll be, just a quick question, and you think, oh, okay, maybe I need to answer that.
Mm.
And that to me is very satisfying. So to me, it's not just that a shining moment or a big project, but I do think the surveys were good projects. The most recent one, the Book Discovery Survey, was a little bit different than some of the other surveys of readers, and so it was very interesting.
So it really is the ground game of your continual daily interaction that brings the joy.
Yep.
It is that ongoing, not a pinnacle moment, but the ongoing enjoying digging in the
Yep.
trenches is what I think you're saying. When you enjoy digging
Exactly.
in the trenches, you're not looking to the mountaintop experience is
No.
nice, but it's really not what you're living for.
Nope, not at all, not at all. So that's yeah, it's been that's been my career. It was funny that um, early on in my career, in my first sales jobs, my former boss, who I didn't know was going to be my boss at that time, when he interviewed me, he said, I was probably like 19, 20, 21 years old. He said, "What's your business philosophy?" I'm thinking, all right, I'm barely in college.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a business philosophy. And I said, if I do my job to the best of my ability, I know everybody can do their job to the best of their ability. And what's interesting, that was so off the cuff. And what's interesting is that's been my philosophy for almost my entire career. So,
Wow. Well said. Heidi, this has been fantastic. If you could leave would-be authors or new authors with one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
one, know who your reader is, which we talked about before, and understand all the aspects of self publishing your book before you get started, because you would hate to invest all of this money, time, and heartache into a book and then find it doesn't meet your needs or the needs of your readers.
Wow, that's beautifully said. And the place to start doing that is to check out Heidi Thorne, the Heidi Thorne podcast, books on Amazon, Udemy course. She's a great resource. I recommend her highly, and you will not only learn, but you'll enjoy learning. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.